Hello, and thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'd like to compare and contrast the Martz in 45 ACP and the conversion and the Wyatt, the Ken Wyatt 45 ACP target pistol. In front of me, I have two John Martz conversions in 45. One is Navy style, 6-inch barrel, and the other one is a disassembled artillery style John Martz conversion in 45 ACP. And also I have the Ken Wyatt conversion. This is a 10-inch heavy barrel target configuration, and this is by Wyatt. This is a top loader. I will demonstrate that. And for comparison purposes, I have a disassembled 10-inch barrel Wyatt 45 ACP conversion. So I'd like to start with a quick comparison, say on the scale here in grams. This is the barrel and its extension for the John Martz. It's about 314.5, so 374.5, so that's a 375 grams. And compare that to the Wyatt barrel extension, and this is about 561 grams, so significantly heavier than the Martz artillery barrel / extension. It's interesting to, in this video, I'm going to kind of look inside the guns, which is rarely done, and see how each gunsmith accomplished the conversion to be able to really do a reliable 45. There's a number of gunsmiths that did conversions of Lugers, some from scratch. They rebuild them, and some like Martz and Wyatt, they did conversions of existing Lugers. So it's interesting to see the internals and how they compare and contrast. And there's really, we're going to see that there are some very small, kind of like insignificant machining done that really counts a lot toward making the gun work, making it cycle in the big caliber, the 45 ACP. Now I'm going to look at the assembled guns first. Here's the Martz assembled. This is the Navy style. So what Martz did is essentially to widen this grip and to lengthen it, okay? So in both dimensions, it's a bigger grip than, say, your regular 9mm Luger. All right, so to accomplish that, the frame he had to take the grip here, the frame, and really widen it, as I said, and make it wider, like thicker and wider. To accept a magazine that loads the 45 cartridges. The upper is essentially a standard, a standard Luger. Obviously the barrel have been changed to a 45 ACP barrel. Okay. If we try to pull the toggle back, this is really, stiff mainspring. All Martz conversions, I have several in 38 and 45 in my collection, and all of them have this very stiff mainspring. And that is also coupled with a magazine that really, you cannot just, it's very difficult for me to put a round in it without using a tool. And here's a tool. And even with the tool, you have to put some, effort to put the rounds here, the next one, and so on. So the mags, the Martz mags, they also have stiff magazine springs. Now, if we look at the Wyatt gun, the first thing we notice is that again, it's there's no removable mag. These guns are loaded from the top. The first thing we notice is that the mainspring is really as stiff as a regular 9mm Luger. As far as the magazine is concerned, now those things would have to be, looks like a cartridge counter, which works like a cartridge counter, but there is a hole here that accepts a pin, and this is like the Luger tool to push the mag down. And this is much less stiff, this magazine, than that of the Martz I just compared to. Okay, so the Wyatt conversions have both a standard stiffness, more or less, mainspring, and a mag spring that is, I would say, maybe a little bit heavier than a standard 9mm, but it's much less stiff than the Martz mags. The Martz magazines, they accept 5 rounds, and similarly the Wyatt mags, built-in mag. So the grip actually doubles as the magazine, and it also holds 5 rounds. Now, in order to lower the toggle in the case of a standard Luger or this Martz conversion, you just pull it, remove the mag, pull it back in, it goes down. Alternatively, even when it's up, this has the MSTR option, the Martz safe toggle release, and if we push this back like this down, the toggle goes down. That's to make sure there's no bullets, so we're good here. The Wyatt, okay, once it's up, you cannot release it because there's, you cannot remove the mag. So it's essential to use this pin here and push it down a little bit. That doubles as like you've just removed the magazine. Push this back, let it go. Okay, that's it. And again, there's no bullets, no rounds chambered for safety. So that was the kind of main, comparison. We know the loading of the Luger or the Martz, in this case conversion, requires a tool. This is very essential for the Martz 45 and 38 super conversions. For the here's the disassembled Wyatt conversion, my other target pistol. It's interesting as a note that the both guns, this one happens to be a BYF 41 Mauser Luger. All of them are matching, fully matching. This one had the bakelite black plastic grips or bakelite grips, and very nicely this is machined in them. And when I take them off and take a look at the inside of them, I see that they are really bakelite. So most likely these grips were with this so-called Black Widow, if you like, before it went to Wyatt for conversion. And the other Wyatt gun, it's a 1940 banner, Mauser banner. Again, if you look at the serial numbers, it's fully matching. It's, you know, of course, for both guns, the barrels are replaced, so those obviously won't be matching, and Wyatt didn't renumber them. And the interesting thing about this gun, if I take the grips out, those lovely grips, those are made by Sarkassian, and George Sarkassian, and his initials are on the back with the full serial number of the gun. And those, I'm not sure if those were done later. Whoever owned this gun sent it to Sarkassian and told him, oh, I want grips like the Martz, refined Martz Luger grips, and he made them a pair and put the slit here. Or possibly Wyatt gave the customer an option to have grips like this. Now Wyatt started in his first conversion was in 1959, sort of a prototype, and he just did them for like 3 or 4 years. And I have a letter signed by him, sent it to a customer stating that who inquired about, you know, buying a 45 conversion from Ken Wyatt. Ken replied that, oh, he stopped a while back and he only did 49 of those guns. And he did them in barrel length. This is the target version, and this is what Wyatt was big on. He was a target, you know, professional target shooter, bullseye, and, you know, other competitions. He won awards. And his concern was basically to build something for a professional target competition shooters. The first one, as I said, this is 10-inch. He built the 8-inch. I think the first one was 8 inches. It's stated in some magazine article, and and he also had an option in 5-inch guns. I have one on its way to me, and I'm excited to get that one. So on those guns, okay, you have the Wyatt 45 patent pending. Now the patent on these was secured in, awarded in June 19, 1962. Okay, and the title on the patent is Target Pistol with Breech Bolt Locking Mechanism and all that. And it was basically for both under the name of Elmer Imther and Kenneth W. Wyatt. So possibly those guns were completed before the patent was awarded in 1962. And the 9mm I'm receiving, it has on the base here, it doesn't have this writing on the shorter barrel, the 5-inch barrel. but it has it printed over here. And I know of, so far, of just two of the shorter 5-inch barrel Wyatt 45 ACP conversions, the one I'm receiving and another one that was auctioned by Rock Island Auction Company, and both they have the patent pending Wyatt, 45 over here at the base. So it seems like, at least from those two samples that I have and the one I'm receiving in the shorter barrel from the Wyatt conversion, that they have, they started as like fully matching in nice shape Lugers. The John Martz philosophy was to take something that is not a collectible gun, because, he had to kind of cut the frame, widen it, weld it, and so on. So no collector Luger was sacrificed with the Martz conversions, as far as I know, and as far as his statements in magazine articles and so on. But the Wyatt conversions, they customers or Wyatt himself didn't really care much. I mean, just give me a Luger and they'll make the conversion. So that's an interesting thing between the different gunsmiths and their conversion requirements and so on. Now the finish on the Wyatt, the barrel is really nicely finished, but the gun itself, the finish on it is, it's not that, I don't know, this seems to probably have been still in the original finish, because except here, well, this one, see, you don't have the button to press for the magazine release, but it's, the finish is more like military finish. Okay, or if it's been refinished, it's not as refined as the beautiful Martz conversions. Okay, Martz made his to look nice for collectors and also to shoot. All the Martz guns I have, they in the higher caliber 45 and 38 Super, they are flawless. And similarly, those two Wyatts I have, they are really flawless. They shoot very nicely. And I have videos on Luger forums that I have uploaded for all those guns, being shot. All right. So now what I'd like to do is to go inside the frame, inside the guns, and see what's going on there. So if we look at the Martz, this is for the artillery, if the Martz gun, we see that essentially, it's just been widened, and at quick look, say, okay, it doesn't differ much than a standard 9mm or 30 Luger, and but then you have the Martz MSTR thing, this thing here. If you put the magazine in, now this mag hold open is gonna lift up, and if you push on the safety toggle, this pushes everything down, so you can release the toggle on an empty inserted magazine. And the way it's done is essentially this lever is coupled to another lever. Let me a knee 90 degrees here. There's a hole, so Martz drilled a hole in the side of the hold open latch, and this has like a pin that went in here, and when you move this, down the safety, this forced the hold open latch even when a magazine is empty magazine is inserted. Now the other thing, again, you can see the widening and the lengthening of this gap over here. The Wyatt didn't have, it took the standard frame, didn't widen or even, you know, the lengthen the frame. You use a standard frame. And the way, but Martz, because the magazine is removable, he had to use the two frames, weld them, and make this thing wider and longer. Okay, so if we take and measure, if we measure roughly the distance between this end and this end here, roughly speaking, it's 47.6 millimeters, 47.6, and if we compare it to the Wyatt, we have about 42.7, okay, 42.7. So you can see that the Martz, you know, that the lengthening or the widening of the grip that he used to allow for the thicker, you know, magazine to hold the 45 rounds and to go inside the grips. Okay, so that's one difference. The Martz, if you look at the Martz, this essentially, beside the MSTR modification, he also has on the guns, I have noticed that the 245s I have, there is this kind of relief here, and this is essentially, it's kind of allowing the breech block, you know, it's kind of allowing it to ride on here, give it some clearance. That's because the magazine we put around here. Okay, this is how the round sits, and this allows essentially the face, lower face of the breech block to have a nice, good, you know, sufficient area here, okay, to push the 45 round in, okay? So that helps a little bit there. And you can see, again, let me put that back in. I want to compare it to the other gun. You can see where the bullet here sits, how far it sits. So when you have the toggle held by the stop here, the face, give or take, of the breech block, the lower face is somewhere over here. So you can see this distance, and we can measure it to be roughly .7 millimeters. So that gives the fast moving toggle enough clearance, that 8.7 millimeters, for it to kind of reach the back of the bullet. And that's important because the toggle is moving very, very fast. And one reason Martz made the the magazine spring stiff is to make it the response time to be short. That means moves the next round up quickly, so the toggle will go in and I'm sorry, the breech block would chamber the round probably and not go over it and miss it. Okay, so there's a nice gap in here. And that gap is really, one main reason for it is that the Martz widened the grip, okay? And with that, you can basically increase that distance because that clearance is very important. That clearance is very important for a very fast moving Luger toggle for the gun to work properly. Now, if we are to compare that, and this is how the bullets in the rounds in the Wyatt conversion would work. Essentially, you put the pin in here, you push down. Well, first we need to move the toggle back. You push on this down, and this is how it would be loaded. It takes a little bit of practice to do it, and you move this down, and you put the next round, and so on and so forth. Okay. And to lower this, obviously you have, again, as I said earlier, to push on this pin down, and this will go down. Again, no bullets, we're good. Now, if we look at the Wyatt conversion, the first thing we see is that this lip over here, this has been shortened, machined from here, taken away some from it. Here's a comparison to the side-by-side to the Martz, which basically he didn't take away from here. Okay, so this is wider. Okay, and if we look at the standard 9mm, again, this thing is wide. So maybe the Martz took a little bit shape, a little bit also from that, but not as much as the Wyatt, which looks like about half the thickness, that ridge there, or top of the back of the mag frame. Not, as much as the Wyatt conversion. And this is going to be something very critical. And why did Wyatt do that? Well, first of all, if you are not going to widen the grips, okay, you are going basically to have to do something, because the standard opening of the 9mm doesn't accept, the 45 without widening the grip. So how Wyatt accomplished that is to shave some metal here, make this narrower. Okay, and you see the way it sits now. If we measure the distance, this is much shorter than the case of the Martz conversion. This is about maybe 2.93 millimeters, which is significantly, for that short of a small of a measurement than the Martz conversion. So I'll come back to this in a little bit. Okay, so the other modification you see is that the hold open has been notched over here. So it still works. Okay. And it'll hold back, because it's fundamental that the hold open work on the Wyatt, because without it, you cannot load the gun, essentially. Okay, so we'll get into that. That's really a key part of this presentation. The other thing that you notice that Wyatt did here, okay, is that you see those lips. So he kind of built in lips, otherwise the bullets are going to, escape from the mag. So there are lips over here that he welded, the left clip and the right and the left clip over here. So those had to be included. And now you have a full simulated magazine, basically. But there's another important thing that's done. Even with that, the grips won't accept the 45. You see the back of the front of the 45 and the back. If we can see it here, it's hard to see. Maybe I should use a flashlight. Maybe we can see it. The back of the bullet here. You see how the upper edge of the round is touching? So this part, when the bullet sits in the magazine, obviously because of the grip angle, this sits at an angle. So this part, not the lower, the upper part, butts against the back of the frame opening, for the mag frame opening. So for the bullet to really at this angle to fit and not get stuck, okay, what you see is very hard to see, but what Wyatt did is in the back over here, I need 3 hands to do this, okay? In the back, he kind of, there's a relief in the back over here. You can see it, that basically act as opening the, or widening that grip a little bit by just machining it, like form a longitudinal channel that goes all the way down so that the bullet would fit. The 45 bullet would fit in. And that's one reason that you see, so this one, you see how close this sits here? And that's one reason why Wyatt shaved this wide piece over here. He cut it like almost by 50%. That was the 9mm. And that's because you wanted to, the bullet here to fit in this opening. So he had to shave this piece or narrow it. Now, when you do that, and the bullet is sitting that far back compared to the 45, the Martz 45 conversion. You see how far the bullet sits here? There's a nice clearance for the face, lower face or edge of the breech block to kind of have enough timing to, for this bullet, the next bullet to move up and for it to feed nicely. But that, if you compare it, you see, you don't have that much of a distance. And that's critical for the Wyatt, and that kind of make it surprising that the Wyatt guns work that reliably or work at all. Okay, so something had to be modified by Wyatt in the frame, okay, to now compensate for that. So this had to be shaved and the back of the frame here kind of machined or relieved so the bullet would sit down and kind of ride nicely up and down. But now the distance is so small, so what's the solution? All right, now here's the solution. We'll have to understand it basically of what Wyatt did and kind of justifies this notch in the hold open over here. If you look at a standard 9mm breech block, the face, you see there's a nice cup here that holds the 9mm bullet. Nice, firm, this lower edge. And you see here, this has a little bit of, some width over here between this cut in the bottom of the breech block is important. And you see there's a small notch over here. This dates back to from the beginning of even the prototype Luger guns had this small notch here. And in a private conversation with Jerry Tomek, GT, my friend, he mentioned that one reason for this is that when you have this pulling the and pushing and pulling the rounds from the mag, this basically touches the top of the bullet like this. And if you didn't have this notch, you know, when this comes in, feeds the round, and then it hits the top of the bullet, you see here, it lands somewhere over here. And if it wasn't there, this, remember, this cut here is for the hold open lip to sit here. So you have to have it. And that's why this, you know, this cut you have to have in the breech block. It's just fundamentally for the hold open. If it wasn't the hold open, just keep the whole thing smooth and one level, and that would really be nice and work well with the Lugers. But that hold open design kind of complicated things and can lead to jamming if you didn't have this tiny notch here. And this tiny notch varied. It's not standard depending on the DWM, Mauser, Simpson, and others. You know, and it's not really always nice cut and clean. This is the DWM. Okay. And you have that notch to help with not hitting the brass and pulling on it as you are chambering around, and before you chamber, this nose goes up and kind of jams the gun. So this tiny notch is very, very important. Okay, and so according to GT, you know, he said that imagine when this moves up and down, and this is the belly of the breech block, slides over the round, the top round of the magazine. It kind of rocks it violently back and forth. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, so we demonstrated here is that this cup-like in this lower edge, you see this over here, which, let's measure it. Okay, this is about roughly 1.7. Let's do it again. Or 1.6, about 1.6 millimeter. Now, if we look at the Martz conversion, it's the same breech block, okay, and looks a bit beefier actually than the 9 millimeter. So this is beefier from here. It's bigger. So Martz made those breech blocks, and you can see the distance. This is relatively wide, this side, and this is narrower, those edges. All right, and if we take a 45 and we put it in here, that's a nice cup. It still holds it. We notice that the thickness of the walls are not as thick of the edges of the cup as in the 9 millimeter, so some material would have to be shaved from there for this to sit nicely and hold. And again, you see the standard kind of mesh, you know, relief here in the belly of the breech block, and you see this notch. So Martz put those notch there as well. Okay. Now, if we go to the Wyatt conversion, ooh, that's fundamentally different. So essentially what Wyatt did is didn't bother building new breech blocks. This is as wide as the 9 millimeter, so it's a standard, oopsie, okay, a standard width. Okay, like a 9 millimeter. But what he did is he basically took this material out of the 9 millimeter from here. He opened it up so it became thinner, and he took away this bottom lip over here. Here, see, this is smooth. No lip there. This is thin. Okay, and the 45 sits here. Now this is interesting because there's no edge to hold the 45. You see it barely kind of the edge of the base of the shell here. It's flushed with the bottom of the breech block. And that's because I'm putting force against the ejector, the extractor, okay, to put it in place. Now the extractor is pushing down on it, so what the bullet would like to do is basically to go down like this, which is not good when you are cycling the gun, because this lip here now is going to touch the round over here. It goes back and it's going to be lowered. It's going to touch here and prematurely before it's ejected, you know, kind of hit here, slide, jam the gun. All right, so how do you solve this problem? And why did Wyatt take away this piece? Now, this is interesting because Wyatt was silent on this. He didn't discuss this much, the reason he did this in the breech block phase, in the patent that he patented. So that was his little secret. And the nice thing about this, if you don't have that part of the cup, is that it's really nice. So when this hits in, you know, and feeds around, the round just peep, slides in here very nicely, chambered. The standard P08 or the Martz conversion had that cup still there. Now the cup is not really, I mean, you can still have a cup and those Lugers work reliably, but in the Wyatt conversion with the forces, with the 45, I think that is an advantage to shave that out. But then it creates a big problem of jamming the gun. Now, why did Wyatt shave this edge over here? Okay, and that is about what we measured it at about 1.8 millimeters with the standard Luger breech block, and 1.5. Okay, so that 1.5 millimeters, okay, he had to cut because you see this is sitting too close over here. And if you didn't have it, when the toggle is all the way to the back, you only have this distance for the returning breech block, you know, to feed the next round. And the magazine, as we saw in the Wyatt, the magazine springs are not that stiff to bring that bullet very, very quickly. So you'd have a jam because this is gonna, you know, this is too short of a distance, and even with the less stiff magazine, this the face of the bolt is gonna miss the back edge of the 45 ACP bullet and not chamber it in. So what's the solution? Because remember that distance is short because Wyatt had to use the standard grip, just machine it a little bit over here, cut down this piece here, and so the bullets are sitting very close to the face of the fully open toggle breech block face. So something needed to be done here, and taking away this about 1.5 millimeter lip gave enough clearance for the toggle, basically with breech block when it comes back, to pick up the round. Okay, now that's something not discussed in the patent, and I think that's very important in understanding this rib over here. So you've noticed there is a rib here, and on the Martz gun, these are standard, just like the 9 millimeter. There's no rib there. So why is this rib? Now, this essentially serves two purposes. The first one is that because we don't have a lower retaining cup edge for the bullet here, what is going to keep the bullet here from going down is the next round in the magazine, so it will slide on top of it. But the next round in the magazine cannot be, it has to be basically pushed down like this. And then it will serve as a support for the bottom part of the bullet being extracted and ultimately ejected. So that's the support, the next round. And if we don't have next round, this would be the support, the follower, magazine follower over here. Okay, so that's why the ridge, because without it, the next round, there's a point where the where this is, shaved, so this is very narrow. You can see it over here, how narrow it is. If you forget about the rib, it's very narrow, okay? And there'll be a point that the next round, the round in the top of the mag, would basically interact with this and kind of lift up, okay? And that it would basically not give the support for the Wyatt conversion. So what Wyatt did is to add that rib over here. So this gave a continuous support for the bullets like that. And I wonder if that's something would have been nice to have in all standard Lugers. Martz didn't pick up on that. I don't know if he studied the Wyatt guns, but that is something very important. Well, it's something in the patent that Wyatt did, so I don't think Martz could have used it. Was Martz aware of the Wyatt guns? I believe so, because the first conversion, the first 45 ACP conversion that Martz did was a magazine-less conversion. And he only did one, and was numbered 1, which I don't have. I would love to get that. This is like 61. This is the artillery. And what he did there is basically to load, make it, the gun load from the top, just like the Wyatt guns, but that also would have been a patent infringing on Wyatt's patent, so Martz refrained from that, and he went for the magazines. Obviously, there's a nice advantage with the magazine, but then at the same time, with such a stiff magazine that only still loads 5 rounds, it's kind of, is it that convenient? Is it much of an improvement? Well, I'd say it's an improvement, but again, there are still some issues with a magazine that has such a stiff spring with the Martz Lugers. So that's the reason, that's the main reason for this rib, and that actually is discussed as the reason why this rib is there, to basically support the lower edge of the round being extracted, and to keep it flushed, have the support for it. This ridge would support, regardless of the position of the breech block, would keep the next round, the top round in the magazine, pressed down nicely and uniformly, and form the support for the spent shell being extracted. Now, there are things that are Wyatt doesn't talk about in the patent, and I think another reason for this rib here is that you see when you cut this 1.4, 1.5 millimeter edge over here, you see this is too thin. The face, the bottom face of the breech block, this is too thin. And I think without this rib, as he used those guns, and Wyatt reports in competitions, he shot like his gun with thousands of rounds with no jams, and that is basically supported by some of the magazine articles where the authors or experts have tested Wyatt's guns. No jamming, and I've tested my guns. They're beautiful. They're so robust and reliable, the Wyatt, guns, conversions. So this would be too thin. It'll be like a blade, and it'll kind of cut and maybe, kind of tangle on this top round in the magazine. So this rib helps with that. It's also helping supporting this thin piece of metal here. Otherwise, as you shoot this will kind of just keep hammering and hammering and hammering, and ultimately is going to bend or cut or, this lip here, and the gun would fail. So it is a support, a fundamental support over here, okay? So the two things that Wyatt was silent on is why he took away, he shaved away this lower lip of the cup over here. And I kind of justified that. It's not in the patent, I justified it. It's because the clearance is so short between the breech block and the next round to chamber, okay? And the rib was used to support, as you said, the bottom, because of that, to support. So it's a secondary, basically, thing that Wyatt thought of this, because, he saw, okay, I had to shave this to make clearance for the gun to work, but now there's no cup, lower part of the cup that would support the bullet, and we have to support it with the top round in the magazine, but the top round of the magazine, kind of this belly of the breech block is sliding over it and can tip it up and down and can jam the gun, so he put this rib in. I think so. The secondary function of it would be to kind of give a support for this very thin lower face of the breech block. Okay, so let's see what else should we discuss here. Okay, so this brings us into the hold open is a fundamental part of the Wyatt gun. Without it, the gun is really useless because it doesn't have a removable mag. So because this rib was installed for the reasons I just mentioned, now we have an issue. So how would this hold open work? And the way it would work is essentially like this. It will hook. Okay, so it needed a relief in the face of the hold open, so it kind of, the hold open kind of goes down and attaches or grabs these, this partitioned wall of the breech block, and then it works. So that's why you see this notch here, okay, in the hold open. So the hold open had to be modified. Sorry for the length of this video, but I kind of thought it's really something like this is needed to compare the approaches of those two outstanding gunsmiths that unfortunately are no longer with us, and look at their creativity and the way they accomplished the conversion to 45 ACP and make the guns cycle and work reliably. Thank you so much, and till we meet again in the next video.